Trigger warning. The following post brings awareness to Violence Vortex by discussing various forms of violence, physical abuse, and abusive relationships, both familial and romantic. Your mental health is important. Please read with caution. Growing up, my birth father used to be referred to by my grandmother as sperm donor. She despised him, and for good reason, because he caused a ton of heartache to my family. Drug use, neglect in regards to supervising me, and selfish acts such as eating the food my mother had worked so hard to provide for me. On more than one occasion, even feeding me spoiled food, milk, because he couldn't be bothered to put effort into being a good father. Aside from his paternal failure, he forced my mother to endure significant mental, emotional, and physical abuse. When it comes to the details of the abuse, I don't have much to say. What happened, more specifically, what he did to her, that's my mother's story to tell. No matter the relationship between her and I currently, it's not my place to share such vulnerable pieces of her story, something she remembers much better than I do. The reason for that is that after all of the abuse she endured at his hands, one day he tried to push her down a staircase while she was holding me. I was small and have no memory of it. My mother does, and told me my entire childhood that in that moment something clicked in her brain and she left. She had tried to leave him multiple times before, but after this terrifying moment, she knew she couldn't return. And she didn't. She moved on and found a man who would end up becoming my stepdad slash adoptive father slash biggest source of my nightmares. Him, I do remember. And this is where the reason for this post truly begins. When I created Violence Vortex, I imagined writing this blog post and it scared me. The rest of the content I felt confident in. This post I was unsure about. Not because I thought it wasn't important enough to talk about. Quite the opposite, actually. I knew how necessary this post would be for me to write, yet, in full transparency, my hands are shaking as I type this. All of these years later, what I'm about to share with you still causes a sick feeling to spread through my belly. The trauma's still there, no matter how much time has passed. In my memories and in my heart. You and I are in this together, though, and I understand that. So even if I shake the entire time until I hit publish, I'll do it. Publishing note, I'm shaking even more now than I was when I started this post. We can do hard things, though, remember? For all of the survivors who have faced similar moments to the ones I will speak about today, we survived to talk about it, and now we get to make sure others understand what we didn't back then. That there are multiple forms of violence, and it's not always broken bones. He was known to be a Christian man, a family man, a good man. He was far from any of that. He stood over 6 feet tall, but threw tantrums like a toddler denied a juice box. The thing is, he made it clear that nothing that he said or did to my mother, myself, or my brothers was abuse. When it came to my mother and I never laid hands on either of you. And as far as my brothers, a boy needs proper discipline by his father. Now, of course, if you know my personal story, then both of those comments might make you laugh in a dark humor sort of way. Still, even while he was jumping over the backs of couches to scream at his children, beating the family dog, slamming his fists down onto his computer keyboard until it smashed into pieces, pouting because he couldn't buy something he wanted, and shoving picture frames into people's faces while he stood over them glaring. He was right about one thing. He never put his hands on my mother. In fact, He only had an interest in touching her when it was time to try and force her into bed with him. He also never put his hands on me, well, unless you count that one time he made me pull my pants and underwear down so he could make sure I felt it as he savagely beat me with his belt. There were also those other times he put his hands on me, the times when nobody else was around, and the intimate moments I reassured myself purely out of survival that at least he isn't mad at me right now. I can deal with this as long as he doesn't be mean to me. He never punched us, never broke our noses, or pushed his fingers into our eyes. He didn't grab our wrists and start twisting until he heard them snap. He didn't do anything like that to his wife and children, something he declared with pride to others. His hands still weren't a source of comfort or safety for us, though. And the look in his eyes when they started turning black during a fit of rage is something that'll forever be etched in my memory. He was my first lesson that even public kindness can end up being dangerous with the wrong intentions. There were so many moments I wished he would just hit me and get it over with. I'd live through a spanking if he would let me keep my pants pulled up this time. He never did, because by that point violence was the least of his concerns. Eventually, I was able to cut contact with him. My brother still lived with him, so I occasionally heard about moments when he lost his temper. His jumping over the back of the couch became something my mother and I exchanged heartache-filled looks over when my brothers would mention it. My brothers were viewed differently by our father, so they were spanked much more regularly. Since they were boys, I guess he believed it was okay to hit them with both his fists and special items he created for the purpose. He believed in discipline, so that's what he told himself he was doing each time he hit them. I may not have been hit by my father, but I was spanked by my mother any time she couldn't handle the way I was acting. Her exact words were, "I didn't need to spank you often, but sometimes I just needed to get the point through your thick skull. A blistering on the ass and you started acting right." It was rarely her hand, since she told me it hurt too much to hit me with it. Instead, she would use any nearby item available. Sneakers, a wooden spoon, a hairbrush, a toy, and even a studded belt one afternoon. Once again, this was not viewed as violent in any way. She was simply giving me an earned punishment. Eventually, that ended too. When I was 14 and in the middle of a breakdown, she couldn't stand my attitude, so she hit me once on my behind while we were standing on the porch together. I glared at her, and it embarrassed her, so she never did it again. We escaped my father and his abuse, so imagine my dismay when my mother's next boyfriend is laying over my toddler brother in our hallway, screaming in his face to shut the fuck up. My brother was, of course, screaming back at him in a terrified cry. I was strongly considering kicking this old dude in his ribs, but my own fear from the past year caused me to freeze in place instead. My mother was at work at the time, so I knew I needed to make sure I could get through the night in order to tell her what had happened. I expected a quick breakup once she found out. A couple months later, the boyfriend was still living with us, and to this day, if you ask that same brother about him, he'll respond almost as enthusiastically about him as I do our father. He got away with what he did to my baby brother because he didn't hit him. Another boyfriend, Michael, also didn't hit anybody. No, wait, that's wrong. He didn't hit us girls, me and my mother, but he hit his sons, and he punched himself in the face. He hit things around us and broke items on purpose. He laid on the ground behind our vehicles when we tried to escape, and he apologized the very next day and promised he'd never scare us again. He got drunk right in front of me and then lied and told my mother I was trying to cause unnecessary drama between them. He playfully undid my bikini top right before pushing me into the deep end of the pool, knowing I was unable to swim at the time. I lost my cool. He told me I needed to take a joke. I didn't find it funny. Neither did Kevin, who was my fiancé at the time. Another person this boyfriend tried to fight. Much like my father, Michael didn't find joy in hitting females. He found joy in hitting males he viewed as weaker than him. And many fights ended with blood, 911 calls, and the innocent parties searching for a hiding spot. Through everything, he maintained the same mindset with the police and with their friends. I didn't hit her. No, he didn't hit my mother. He did do unspeakable things to her in public places, our own home, and various vehicles, all of which myself, my fiancé, and my brothers were forced to witness. One specific late night, Michael starts a drunken fight with my mother, who runs to Kevin and I's room for help. Michael charges in behind her and grabs our phones straight out of our hands, threatening to destroy them if we follow. He and my mother then rush downstairs, where Michael proceeds to sexually attack her on our living room couch. She repeatedly screams to us for help, but remember that we have no phones. Kevin's the reason things did not escalate even further, since he ran full sprint down our stairs, out our front door, down the street close to 4 miles to reach a nearby gas station, and called emergency services for help. Somehow, Michael got away with it. Isn't that crazy? If you feel like hearing something even crazier, let me tell you a crucial detail. In between the boyfriend that screamed at my brother and Michael, I had my own boyfriend, Doug, who could not claim, well, at least I didn't hit her, because he did. In fact, repeatedly hit me. I purposely put this story out of order because I want you to understand the full impact of not understanding what covert violence looks like. Before my ex-boyfriend, I believed physical abuse only counts if they break your bone or cause significant injury. Then, Doug punched me hard in my arm one random day when I sassed him. Next, he pulled my hair as I walked away from him on another day. Those first few aggressive acts I convinced myself had been him being too rough playfully, because boys hit you when they like you, right? One day, he choked me during a sexual act, and when I protested, he called me vanilla and told me it was just him trying to be sexy. I was currently being sexually abused by Doug on a regular basis, so quite honestly, I believed I had just messed up my previous prayer of being physically assaulted instead of sexually assaulted by someone I cared about. With Doug, I received both. I didn't know who to turn to because in my own eyes, I deserved it for my choices. And it continued until I got caught crying by a boy at school and my makeup ran. The boy, Kevin, ironically enough, noticed my black eye and questioned who gave it to me. Kevin was the first and only person I told in that moment what was happening. Not just the hitting, the entire thing, including when Doug had tricked me into a family's garage and attempted to rape me. I told this boy everything, and he proceeded to locate Doug and quite physically question him about why he believes it's appropriate to put hands on his girlfriend. Doug broke up with me for being a cheating whore because of what happened. To be clear, me and my future husband were not being inappropriate in any way while Doug and I dated. Doug didn't believe me, though, and decided someone like me wasn't worth being loved by him anymore. Doug didn't love me either way, no matter what guilt trip he attempted to give me. I still believed I was a cheating whore somehow. Not because I had any intention of cheating on Doug in any way, only because I admitted to a new friend what was happening behind closed doors. Doug was gone. I started dating Kevin, and life moved on. When I was introduced to Kevin's family, I learned extremely quickly that he had not avoided the physical aspect of abuse. Once again, Kevin's details are his to share, but I know him well enough to know he's okay with me sharing that he suffered severe physical abuse at the hands of the men in his family. One man punished him for any perceived failure, attitude, or lack of accountability with violence, using various forms including his fists, weapons, belts, tree branches, and multiple other items that left obvious and invisible marks on Kevin's heart and mind. The physical abuse only stopped because Kevin eventually grew up enough to overpower the man and cause enough fear to scare him into backing off. Not without the backhanded comments to the rest of his family that Kevin has a temper. Another man beat him at a young age to such a degree that he almost died on more than one occasion. His life was saved by medical personnel, but not before the damage was inflicted. His physical abuse was severe and unavoidable for his entire childhood and well into his teen years. When I met him, I remembered my own childhood and told myself that I had no right to ever complain. Kevin had it so much worse than I did. So who was I to complain about a bare butt spanking from a father or a couple punches and hair pulls from an ex-boyfriend? He had been beaten within an inch of his life and continued to be hit by others for years after. I had no right to act like I knew what that felt like. So I took those memories and shoved them down where I could focus on those who truly deserved the label violent survivor. I didn't believe I was part of that category, but I knew this guy I was starting to develop deep feelings for was. So that left me with a painful feeling in my heart knowing I didn't belong anywhere. I was too broken for the not abused crowd, but I hadn't been broken enough for the abused crowd. Then my mother met Michael. Now do you understand how the cycle of violence works? Do you see how even when we are not the targeted victim, even witnessing someone's abuse can teach us things that are untrue? I watched my mother be abused by multiple men over multiple years, and they didn't hit her. Yet, somehow, once I was in my own relationship where I was being hit, I convinced myself it still wasn't violence. None of it could be violence because then that would mean we were all in danger. And that was more terrifying than some bruises and cuts. I don't want every post to be a trauma dump, so I hope my leaving certain details out will allow you to read these posts without them being major triggers for you. I need to phrase things in a certain way, though, so that you can understand what I'm saying without the need for the details I'm leaving out, because this is important. We need to stop telling little girls that boys hit them because they like them, and we need to tell everyone, no matter their gender, that physical abuse and intimidation is not just one or two certain acts, and if they are not checked off, then you are not valid. That's a lie that abusers hope we never realize is false. A child watching their father destroy something in a fit of rage is still traumatizing, even if they never put their hands on that child. A man having a remote thrown at his head is still something that inflicts pain on his body. And even worse, he isn't allowed to react because then he's the abuser in the public's eyes. How is that fair? Why are we teaching children that their fear is only valid if a set of boxes is checked? Abusers intentionally avoid checking those boxes for that exact reason, so that while they stand over their shaking wife and listen to their children sob for daddy to stop, they can go to sleep that night knowing, I'm a good man. I didn't put my hands on her. Absolutely not. That's not something we are allowing any longer. We as a community are going to stand up and start holding abusers accountable for their actions. All of them. If someone acts in a way that causes another person to fear for their safety or even their life in general, that is violence. Teaching a child otherwise is continuing a cycle, because that child will learn to react to their emotions no matter what. Because feelings are big and they don't know how to handle them. But that same child will get in trouble for their meltdown. Meanwhile, their parent is throwing a tantrum of their own and getting away with it. That child will then grow up, knowing how they got treated during their childhood, and if something doesn't get healed within them, then guess who is next to believe they get to act however they want without consequence. But at what age does a tantrum become allowable to others? 4 or 40? What's the difference between I'm violent and abusive, I did it because you made me, and I'm doing this because you need to be disciplined? Why is a child not allowed to throw something at the television, breaking it, because that's disrespectful to the rest of the members of the household, but their mom is allowed to take a hammer and smash their PlayStation right in front of them because her kid made her mad, and the last social media video she watched showed a fellow parent doing the same exact thing? Why is a child not allowed to slam their bedroom door without losing it, forced to earn it back at their parents' discretion? Meanwhile, their dad is allowed to kick down the bathroom door to get to the person on the other side of it. That is violence. If a child has consequences for breaking the television, then they also have the right to expect there to be consequences for the way you cause pain to them. Not a guilt trip about them staying silent at dinner an hour later. Why won't you come hang out with me? Gee, I wonder why. If you break the bathroom door down and terrify your family, you don't get to expect them to get over it once you have cooled off. You've caused more damage than just a broken door. You don't get to pretend that you didn't. I refuse to remain silent about it any longer. People's lives are at stake, and until we start discussing what violence is and is not, nothing's going to change. If you resonate with something I've talked about in this post, let me say this before I go. My heart hurts for you that you experienced violence in a way that made you feel like you were blowing things out of proportion. You weren't. Even if someone did not put their hands on you, it was still violence, and it was still abuse. In case you need someone to say it again. Even if you were not hit by them, if they caused you to fear for your safety or the safety of your loved ones, it was still a violent act, and you are worthy of healing. If you were forced to witness intimidation, destruction of property, abuse of your loved ones, or accidental injuries that you know deep down in your heart were very much intentional, you did not deserve to live like that, and you're also worthy of healing. We did not ask for the violence. We did not cause the violence, and we should never have had to survive the violence. I can't go back and change our memories, yours or mine, but I can sit here today, right now, and tell you that you are valid in finally admitting what you've always needed to admit. That's the first step to healing that wound. You have to acknowledge that the wound exists and that it is much more than the scrape the abuser tried to convince you it was. I would like to take this brief moment to clarify something. I don't want someone who has been hit, choked, or otherwise physically harmed to read this and believe I'm minimizing what they went through. I want it stated that having your bones broken, your teeth knocked out, or being forced to hide a black eye is a disgustingly cruel trauma for any human being to force on someone they claim to care about. This post is not meant to make you feel like you need to defend your abuse to me in any way. Believe me, the extent of your physical pain is never something you need to try and prove to me. I stand with you already. Everything I said above also applies to you. You didn't deserve any of it, and I truly hope you heal from whatever scars were left. Please know that my heart goes out to you and your loved ones, and my messages are always open to you if you need me. You're a survivor whether your scars exist on the outside or the inside. I love you all, and I'm proud of you for facing Violence Vortex and living to talk about it. To those of us who have faced this villain and lost their life, not a day goes by that I won't shout so loudly even heaven hears me. I will never let a survivor's memory ever be lost in the far too often questioning of why didn't they just leave if it was so bad? Until next time, Brie.